Sometimes the defense is worse than the accusation. And as a movement, we do well to remember that. It doesn't make much sense to use the person that you kidnapped as an alibi against the shoplifting, does it? But from time to time, it seems to me that that's exactly what we're doing. Now, obviously, I have to paint with a damn broad brush here. The loose amalgamation of like-minded activists that I'm putting under the umbrella of atheism is too diverse to have any one approach to anything. But there are still, certain arguments, certain analogies, certain defenses that float to the top of the meme pool. And as if to remind us that we're not immune to irrationality and outright stupidity, not all of them are rational or even correct. In fact, sometimes we're in such a hurry to offer a sound defense that we don't even bother to see if the accusation has any meaning. Take, for example, the idea that atheism is the same as religion. Now, in all ways, that's an absurd statement. Atheism includes exactly 0 of the things that you find listed after religion in the dictionary. There's no sacred, there's no doctrine, there's no supreme being, there's no worship, there are no rituals. Those are all the things that religion means. And maybe that's why we're so tempted to defend ourselves. It's like they said bats were made of cheese. How could you not immediately come up with 100 ways to refute that? But at the same time, why would you refute it? Of fucking course bats aren't made of cheese. At a certain level of stupid, your refutation is its own type of validation. If you're wrong enough, the simple fact that a debate is happening is a victory for the other side. Look at the global warming denialists. Even if the side with all the science keeps winning every debate, the very fact that there's a continuing debate creates the illusion of uncertainty. Likewise, even a mildly stupid accusation can be made worse if you run from it too far too fast. So to be clear, I'm not saying that we shouldn't rebuff the idea that atheism is just like a religion. We should. It's easy. Just read the definition of religion. But it seems like a lot of us have really internalized that jibe and go way out of our way to prove that it's not true. Whenever I hear people talking about being open-minded to religion but not convinced, when I hear people talking about being a 6 on the Dawkins scale or dubbing themselves agnostic atheists, that's what I think of. I see a bunch of people going way out of their way to prove that they're not dogmatic about a thing that has no dogma. Anytime I hear atheists talking about how open-minded they are towards religion, I just substitute the word God with Santa Claus, and suddenly it becomes damn obvious what a stupid and unjustified concession they're making. If somebody says, don't get me wrong, I'm open-minded about Santa Claus, I just don't find the arguments entirely convincing, you sound like a fucking idiot. I mean, I guess I can envision a couple of very limited scenarios where it might make sense to point out that, given enough evidence, you'd even believe in Santa Claus if you're trying to explain the nature of degrees of uncertainty and changing your opinion based on evidence. That might be a great analogy. But in virtually any other scenario, an adult telling you that they haven't entirely ruled out the existence of Santa Claus would be an admission of stupidity. And before anybody scoffs at my analogy, I want to point out Santa Claus is an infinitely more reasonable claim than even the most philosophically forgivable postulation of God. Santa violates, 3 laws of physics, maybe? God violates all of them, and several of the laws of logic as well. There's nothing in the Santa mythology as grossly contradictory as the concept of being all-knowing and all-powerful at the same time. There's no argument against Santa's existence as damning as the problem of evil. You'd have to take fewer steps to get from reality to a reality with Santa Claus than reality to a reality with God. And sure, yes, granted, if as many grown adults in this country believed in Santa Claus as believe in God, we'd need to counter him. We'd need the Matt Dillahunties and David Smalleys of a-Santaism out there. We'd need conferences that we could go to, get together as a community, pool our anti-Santa schemes. We'd need blogs and podcasts and forums and Facebook groups about how ridiculous these Santa believers were getting. So I'm not against debating. I'm against conceding. See, sometimes we're tempted to cede a little ground because we know we can still win the argument. So we offer up a bone about how there really are some good arguments for God. No, there fucking aren't. In fact, I have people ask me this all the time. They're like, what's the most convincing argument you've ever heard for God? I've been asked that maybe 100 times. Nobody has ever asked me the most convincing argument I've ever heard for Santa. But this infinitely less plausible concept, yeah, even atheists ask me about this one. And think about what's contained in that question. Why would there be any good argument in favor of God? How could there be? We've been to the North Pole and Santa wasn't there. And yet many people, even within atheism, still act like, does God exist is a good question. I don't think I could come up with a stupider hypothesis than God. I challenge you to do that. I challenge you to come up with a single hypothesis that at once contradicts all the known laws of physics, contradicts itself, contradicts logic, contradicts all of our observation of nature, and something, plus something. You've got to add something to make it even stupider. At best, you can come up with an equally stupid hypothesis that's easier to definitively disprove, but you haven't come up with a stupider hypothesis, and yet we constantly act like this is a reasonable thing to think. And look, I get it. There are a lot of really smart people that believe this dumb shit, and it's hard to say this thing that you think is stupid without implying you're stupid, but it's still better to try that than it is to just be stupid along with them for a few minutes. Let me be very clear here. There are plenty of smart reasons to believe really stupid stuff. You know, if you grew up in a religious family and you were indoctrinated before you were old enough to question the shit that you were being told, it's a really tough fight to get out. If your value as a person is being assessed by your community based on how religious you are, if you had enough irrational fears drilled deep enough into your brain, if you were simply never presented with good arguments for God, if your relationship with your family or your colleagues or if your employment depends on you believing in God, there are plenty of reasons for smart people to compartmentalize and believe even the dumbest of shit, but that doesn't make the shit less dumb. So yes, technically speaking, I'm still a 6.99999 whatever on the Dawkins scale. Yes, I'm still agnostic about God if you redefine the word in contradiction to all the dictionaries, the coinage, and the common usage as so many folks are wont to do. But I'm less open-minded about God than I am about Santa Claus. I'm less open-minded about God than I am about David Icke's shape-shifting interterrestrial lizard overlords. I'm less open-minded about God than I am about my penis actually being Napoleon. And I'm less open-minded about it because I'm thinking correctly. I'm basing my willingness to entertain a truth claim on its prior probability, its internal consistency, and the evidence backing it up. That's what you're supposed to do. That's how thinking is supposed to work. Being open-minded about dumb shit is how imagination works. Yes, that's important, but it's a completely different fucking thing. So once more, and sorry if I'm beating a dead horse here, but I am as certain about God not existing as I am about any other thing one could be said to be certain about. And what's more, that is the most intellectually defensible position to take on the matter. Come get me, inbox. I ain't scared.